So let's go from the top. Case study, group analysis, group formation, which is 10 points. So how did this particular section? This particular section is fine.
Yeah, so we were good with that.
Okay, so this is perfect. This is fairly straightforward. Please make it as brief as possible. I know what can also work is like a little organogram. Although organogram has like a hierarchy, but you can just put little, little blocks and just put it into, this is this person. You can even put a little picture of it, and then this is their role. This is this person. This is their role. This is their role, and then a little table, communication protocols, timeline for completion, conflict resolution mechanism, regular meeting schedule, etc. That can all of this can be a little table that you put together, and it would be like half a page, if not like a full page, and that's about it.
Okay.
So not too much details and paragraphs and things. Little table, a little organogram, and off you go. Maintain a group process log documenting key decisions, challenges. Again, it is 3 key decisions, challenges, and how they will resolve.
Okay.
Again, that can also be a little table. You see key decisions that was made. So you say key decision, and it was on the week 4, and we had a discussion, and it was resolved in this way. We voted, or we sort of reached a resolution, or we sort of discussed through it. Another one was a decision around who's going to finalize the report. We discussed it in week 5, and the challenge was that everybody wanted to do it. And we sort of discussed it, and we all decided that we'll all do it. One person will do it, but we all will edit it at the end and sign it off. And those can be, and it would be at least not more than 5, and not less than 3. So between 3 and 5, sort of key decisions. I mean, you're not going to have in there. We didn't know which day we must meet, and we used a WhatsApp poll. That's not entirely necessary, although it could be a key decision, especially if all 3 of you were working and had other responsibilities. So if it was a decision that required some discussion, that required some sort of either voting, or don't like really voting, but some sort of decision that needed to be made, and there was some discussion, then you can log it, but don't put like 10 things down. That's a bit much. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, awesome. And then complete the peer evaluation form of the project. And so you do have those evaluation forms, yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, this is the interesting thing. What I've done in the past with group submissions is that I created an online survey, completely anonymous, and that evaluation form I would then put as a survey. You would then send you a link. You would then go online and evaluate your peers, and they will evaluate you. So you will have 2 evaluations, and they will each one will have evaluations. And then what I would do is I would then take those and I would mark according to those results. Now, I'm not sure whether that would work in this case. What do you think?
I feel that you could, like, what you're trying to find would be present in the group charter thing.
Okay.
But there could also be like some small like value added from getting maybe a more personal perspective. But I think overall the charter will give a lot of that information that you're looking for within the peer evaluation.
Okay.
Even if people like it is biased, the way we maybe talk about a problem being solved, you'll still understand maybe how one person, maybe couldn't find time and that did like annoy some people in the group. I feel like you can understand the dynamics, even if people aren't trying to be rude.
Okay. Okay. Good. That's perfect. And then, okay, so the bulk of it is the case study and analysis. So let me pause there. Yeah, what's your question?
So, I'm speaking on behalf of my whole group. So we wanted to know, from my understanding, we have to choose between, for the case studies, there's like, I don't know how many, 5 of them, and it says choose 3. So then do we use those 3 to answer every single question that follows, or do we see which question is applicable and most relevant to which case study, and then kind of like subdivide the case studies over which questions they are most relevant to?
Okay, so my reading of this is the first part is the perspective, so that gives you the framework, and then it tells you for each perspective you must give at least 2 theoretical frameworks or models, analyze the case demonstrating adherence to violation of King 4 principles. So you can have to look at which of the King 4 principles is aligned to leadership, corporate management of ethics, corporate social responsibility, stakeholder impact engagement. Stakeholder impact engagement is number 16. Evaluate the case against UN global compact principles where applicable. So you have to pick one or 2 or 3 as it aligns to the case. Identify key stakeholders affected and analyze the quality of stakeholder engagement, and then propose governance improvements that could have prevented the failure. Right, so these are the perspectives. This is what needs to be included under each perspective, and these are the cases. Select 3 of the following cases for your analysis, ensuring you cover all 5 perspectives across your selected cases.
So that's where our kind of issue is with the case studies and the perspectives.
Okay, so you pick Steinhoff's corporate failure. Oof, that's billions, 120 billion corporate failure. People's monies and pensions got wiped out within like 36 hours. It was horrible. It's our worst corporate failure in our history. So you pick Steinhoff. So then you go from a leadership and strategic management perspective. Let's analyze that corporate failure by getting 2 theoretical frameworks, by looking at how Steinhoff, in terms of their leadership and strategic management, how did they adhere to King 4? In terms of their corporate governance, performance, and ethics, how did they adhere to King 4? In terms of their management of ethics, how did they adhere to King 4? In terms of the corporate social responsibility, how did they adhere to King 4, etc. Does that make sense? So for each one of so you'll have Steinhoff corporate failure as a subheading. And you'll say this below or follows or below. We will aim to analyze the corporate failure of Steinhoff using 5 different perspectives in terms of leadership, corporate performance, management of ethics, corporate social responsibility, stakeholder impact, and engagement.
So we must use all 5 perspectives times 3
all 5 perspectives for each one.
Okay, great.
And within each perspective, you will at least pick 2 theoretical frameworks. So there's under leadership, you'll find there's different theories. Under management of ethics, you'll find there's different theories. Under corporate social responsibility, there's different ways of approaching corporate, not really theories, but sort of different models of approaching corporate social responsibility. So what I would like to see is, again, keeping it tight, keeping it sort of not to carry on and on and on. Three of the following ensuring cover all 5 perspectives across the respective case. Now you see, no, oh, I didn't design this assessment. Bugger, bugger, bugger. Okay, so if I just stop reading there, and I thought this is what I was my understanding as well, but clearly that's a very good question, because if I read this case perspective mapping, if I read through this, then it says that you have to pick 3 cases and you have to at least 1 per case, but all 5 have to be covered. So some of them will be covered in more than 1 case. And that makes sense, because there's 5 perspectives.
So should we maybe do subheadings leadership and strategic management? We discussed that, and then we can be like, and the Steinhoff case really does go into detail about the importance of management through this and this and this, and we relate it to the case. And then should we do another heading of the next perspective, corporate performance, which we would say relates to Volkswagen?
Yeah, but according to the assessment, you should cover each perspective. You should cover each case study, but not all perspectives for all the case studies, if that makes sense.
Okay, so cover. I'm going to write on the group maybe.
Yeah. So if you look at this, it says you should cover each case study at least 1 perspective. Each case should analyze at least 1 perspective. Each perspective should be covered at least once across your selected case. So there's 5 perspectives, but there's only 3 case studies. Mm-hmm. So if you use leadership, corporate performance, and management control, which they call here management of ethics, 1 in each case, 1, 2, 3, then corporate social responsibility, you can then apply to case 1 or to case 3. And then stakeholder impact, you can apply to case 1 or to case 2. Or you might decide, you know what, if we pick Steinhoff, so for instance, Steinhoff, the 2 major perspectives that would give you good is, 1, it was leadership failure. I can definitely tell you that. And then another one was management of ethics. Mm-hmm. If you think of Steinhoff, those 2 are the 2 that stand out. Those are the 2 that stand out. If you think of Tonga Hewlett auditing scandal, it is corporate performance. If you think of the Maracana unfair wage negotiations and massacre, leadership, and then corporate social responsibility, or even stakeholder impact, definitely. Volkswagen Dieselgate, that's definitely performance and control, corporate performance and control, and stakeholder engagement, because they just straight up lied to their stakeholders. And then the BP and Deepwater Horizon is also corporate responsibility from a environmental impact point of view. So look at the 3. So what I would do is first pick your 3 cases and ask yourself, okay, these 3 cases, let's read through all 5 of them. Let's pick 3. And I hope you've picked 3 already, hey? Or you're sort of looking at 3.
We've chosen 3, but then we wanted to know what the question was. So we haven't finalized our decision, but we know which ones we'd potentially want to use.
Yeah. So pick your 3, and then within those 3, then say, okay, so if it's Steinhoff, for Steinhoff, we'll definitely do leadership and management of ethics, because those 2 for Steinhoff, those 2 are definitely the 2 where you'll get as most information. And if you research it, you'll find those were the 2 major failures. If you're choosing BP and Deepwater Horizon, oil spill, definitely corporate social responsibility from a environmental impact. If you're choosing Volkswagen Dieselgate, they actually call Dieselgate. It's stakeholder engagement because there's a straight up lied. And then also leadership failure. A lot of these, all of them, I can tell you right now, all of them, leadership failures and management of ethics, all 5 of them, they reek of them. They are absolutely, those are the 2 major ones for all 5 of them. Failure of management and then failure of management of ethics. There was no clear, except for the Deepwater Horizon, although, yeah, except for that one, I suppose, but definitely leadership, because they didn't make the hard decisions immediately. If they did make those hard decisions immediately, like they kept it quiet for more than something like 3 days after the well start, because what they have is at the bottom of these wells, they've got these BOPs, these blowout preventers. They are literally, it's a piece of explosive device that if there is anything goes wrong, then the explosive device explodes and it cuts off the well point, so that there's no oil coming into the ocean, because these are at the bottom of the ocean bottom. And that blow-up preventer failed. And when they started spilling, they kept it quiet. They tried to fix it. 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 And when they couldn't fix it, after keeping it quiet for more than 3 days, 72 hours, it blew up the platform, and that massive catastrophic failure. So that one also just a failure of management. So does that make sense? So you've got 3 cases and you have to cover all 5 of them, not in each case, but all 5 in total across the 3 cases.
Okay. Starting at the so what do you think we should do for our subheading? Should it be the perspectives or should it be as the case studies?
So what you would do is your introduction. You'll say, in the section below, we will be doing, we will be selecting 3 case studies to best illustrate sort of, corporate citizenship and the failure of leadership, etc. And just 2 or 3 sentences in introduction. Below is a matrix, is a case perspective map, which illustrates which cases. So you'll have case 1, Steinhoff. You'll have case 2, Tongaat, and case 3, you'll have Volkswagen. And then you'll tick off which ones. As illustrated in the table above or in the table below, we will be covering for Tongaat, we'll be looking at leadership and strategic management and at corporate performance and control failures. For this case, we will be looking at this. For this case, we'll be looking at that. And then what you will do then is the next heading would be the case of Steinhoff's corporate failure. And then below that, you'll say, you give as your introduction, like a mini introduction, 2 or 3 sentences telling us a little bit about Steinhoff. In terms of Steinhoff, blah, 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 it was the biggest corporate failure, blah, blah, blah. And you'll reference text, you'll reference it. We will be analyzing the corporate failure of Steinhoff from the perspective of leadership and strategic management failures and management of ethics. Mm-hmm. And then you'll have leadership and strategic management failure at Steinhoff. Reference. Management of ethics failure at Steinhoff. Reference. And that's it. In the next one, you'll have Volkswagen, the case of Volkswagen Dieselgate. And then you'll say, using the perspectives of stakeholder engagement and corporate social responsibility or management of ethics, we will be analyzing the case of Volkswagen, Dieselgate scandal in 2014, blah, 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 this happened. And then you'll say management failure, or you'll say corporate performance control failures at Volkswagen. Then you'll go into that. And then below that, you'll say, or maybe Volkswagen is only one. And then the next one. So your anchor title is the case study. And then below that would be a small introduction to the case, background, and then below that would then be the perspective that you're going to be analyzing the case through. So think of the perspective as the lens. This is the lens that we're looking at to analyze the corporate failure of sign-off, the failure of leadership and strategic management. This is the lens that we're going to look through to analyze management of ethics failures at Volkswagen. You know, so the anchor or the big title would be the case study, and below that would be a little background, and then you go into the analysis, whether you're doing leadership, whether you're doing corporate performance control, management of ethics, corporate social responsibility, etc. And but you do have a bigger heading, which is your case, what is this called? Case study selection and analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have a little introduction. Below follows analysis of 3 case studies: the case of BP, the case of Volkswagen, the case of Hewlett Tonguard, in which we'll be using 5 different perspectives, leadership, in which we will be analyzing it through using King 4 principles, as well as the UN Global Compact, blah, blah, blah. Below is a matrix of which the 3 case studies and which perspective we'll be using to analyze each case study. Little table, tick, tick, tick. And then the next one would then be the next title then would be Volkswagen. Then you say Volkswagen, background, 2 sentences, 3 sentences background, then leadership failures at Volkswagen, Then you go into it, blah, blah, blah. Next one, Hewlett Tonguard, background to the Hewlett Tonguard situation issue, Now you go into management of ethics failures at Hewlett Tonguard, blah, blah. Then you go into it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Then it was the climate change analysis.
Yeah, for each, and that is why for each section, if you have Hewlett Tonguard, then below the analysis, the perspectives or the different lenses, you will then have your climate change analysis for each one of them.
So climate change analysis, sorry, for each case.
Analysis for each case include a brief. I'm going to make a call and just say just for the 3 cases that you covered.
Okay.
Action, case study background, perspective, knowledge, reflection and learning. Okay, so the reflection and learning is the last little bit. That's the last section that I see sort of hangs behind. Because for each case study, you'll have a little background, then you'll do the analysis, you'll do your recommendations. Then in between 4 and 5, you'll have climate change analysis in there, should be in there. Oh, no, climate change consideration is there. Reflection and learning, 200 words, the insight gained from the analysis, application, factors, challenges, and count. Okay, now that's really straightforward. Goody. How's that? That sounds a bit better. It sort of gives you a better idea. But thank you for the questions, because I think it would be good also for me to possibly just drop this into either a little, I don't know, almost like a template with a little explanation underneath, even if it's just a Word document with a couple of sort of examples in it, just as a guideline.
That would be great. I know that's kind of what we were hoping for, something like that. So I'm sure everyone will appreciate that.
Okay. Okie dokie. So I will do that. So if you can just give me until the end of the week.
That's
Because,
enough.
yeah, yeah. Because I know that you guys are sort of, there's quite a few other submissions as well. But this one is one of the last submissions, I think, is it?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So you do have a bit of time. Alrighty.
So
So
yeah,
that's good.
perfect.
Okay, that's good. I will leave all of that into the recording because then that's important. So what I'll do now is actually I won't keep much of the time, but what I'll do is I'll look at stakeholder engagement from the perspective of TFG, which is the Voshini Group. They are a retailer. They own a whole lot of different brands, from Fushini to Markham's to they've got a whole lot. Boom homeware stores. They've got a whole lot of brands. They are our biggest sort of fashion retailer, fashion homeware retailer in South Africa. Believe it or not, because they've got so many different brands. So how do they define their stakeholders? TFG identifies stakeholders, those who are affected by its ability to create sustainable value. It's quite interesting how we've changed, how we moved away from shareholders to stakeholders and what stakeholders used to include. So the big shift happened about 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when we moved away from just our shareholders. And we used to call them shareholders, and then we had our workers, and then we had our customers, and then we had suppliers, and those type of relationships. And then we had corporate sort of relationships or corporate relations. It used to be called corporate relations, and corporate relations used to deal with sort of external parties, governments, shareholders. They would work with industry bodies and so forth. And then about 20 years ago, it became a more of an integrated approach. That stakeholders are more than just those people that we have to give information to. So the way that a lot of companies treat stakeholders, it's sort of on a spectrum. On the one side, it is you are bother, and we will give you the least amount of information that we legally have to supply you with. And a lot of companies actually do treat their stakeholders that way. It is very much a reactive approach. Those are the companies that have corporate relations officers. They are companies that sort of give the bare minimum information and share the bare minimum. You can get information if you go onto our website. You can get information if you come to our annual general meeting. Our shareholders are our priority because those are the ones that we create value for. And as long as we stay sort of on the right side of the law, then we don't bother you if you don't bother us. And on the other extreme of that, there's this sort of continuum, on the other extreme of that, our stakeholder, what we call stakeholder integrated stakeholder management approach. And these are companies that have stakeholder, they've got stakeholder departments. They don't have corporate relations, but they've got sort of stakeholder officers. They've got whole departments that are dedicated to working with all stakeholders. And that is from customers to employees to suppliers to unions to regulators to investors to communities to social networks to it's an approach which is a lot more integrated. It's looking at everyone and how do we continuously share information with them? How do we partner with you? And they talk about stakeholder partnerships rather than this sort of very adversarial, combative approach. They tend to have much better relationships with government. They tend to have much better relationship with sort of civil society and community organizations. And then you've got everything in between. So it all depends on where you are on this sort of continuum. If you look at what King 4 is saying, King 4 is saying you're looking at an inclusive shareholder principle, and inclusive has a very, especially in the last 2 years, sort of how the winds of political winds have shifted. When we talk about DEI, we talk about SDG, we talk about inclusivity. It's become almost like a woke sort of swear word. Inclusive just means it's not become such a good thing, and it's not meant in that way. Inclusive simply means, how do we bring all of our stakeholders together, and how do we fully understand what our responsibility is as an organization towards our stakeholders? And again, our stakeholders is everyone. If you as a business, and this goes right back to my discussion that I had right at the beginning of the course, if your view is that an organization has a moral and ethical obligation towards the environment, towards society, and towards all of its stakeholders, moral and ethical obligation to act in a as a citizen. That's what we talk about, corporate citizenships, to act as a positive contributing member of society. You're almost like a citizen of society. And as an organization, you almost get imbued with these characteristics of being a citizen. And as citizens, we want to do the right thing. We want to contribute to all society. We want to be custodians of the environment. We want to give more than what we take out. We don't want to take more than what we deserve. We don't want to take more than what we need. And if we talk about corporate citizenship in that perspective, where a company is imbued with this moral and ethical obligation to be a contributing and a value additive member of society, if you look at it in that perspective, then inclusive stakeholder engagement makes sense. Think of companies on the other extreme. If you think of a company as a profit engine, here to deliver profit and value for the shareholders. It is not the responsibility of companies. Companies are entities. They are there to generate profit. They are there to generate and come up with products that they sell for profit, and it's a profit generator. And it's not a company's responsibility to look after the environment. It's not a company's, that's the government's job. It's not the company's responsibility to care for society. That's the government's job. It is not a company's responsibility to look after employees. That's why we've got laws. And we will abide by the rules, we'll abide by the laws, but if the laws aren't there, they don't expect us to act in a way that is moral or ethical. And that's the tension. That's always the tension, those two perspectives. Because if one looks at the company, if we looks at stakeholder engagement, then and you look and you think of corporate citizenship, and you think of the moral and ethical obligation of a company, then inclusive stakeholder engagement makes absolute sense, because that's the right thing to do. And again, right is not necessarily legal. Right is what is acceptable in society. If you think of a company as just a profit engine, just there to come up with products and to sell it, they're not a real person. They're just an entity that's to deliver value for shareholders and to drive economic growth or to drive the economy. Then what are stakeholders? We only have one stakeholder, and that's our shareholder. They are the owners of production. They're the owners of the business. And they're the only ones that we are, as a company, that we are responsible for and beholden to. So how does the Foschini Group look at its stakeholders? Their engagement occurs across all divisions through daily operations, prioritized based on influence, dependent on strategic importance, and emphasizing transparency, fairness, and shared value. That word, shared value, again. Shared value. It's often a word that is abused and misused. Shared value, shared value, shared value. Because the reason why I'm a bit cynical of that word, it's one of those corporate words that finds itself into everything. If you're talking about true shared value, then your employees will be the best paid in the industry. Your suppliers will be able to make the most money. Your unions would love you, and your customers would absolutely love you because they're getting the best products, the best value for money, and your business would be based on philanthropy, shared value, sharing the profit, sharing the value that you generate. So true shared value means that all the profit that you make and everything that you do is not about profit. It's about value for customers. It's value for employees, suppliers, for regulators through your tax contributions, for communities through your operations. So whenever I hear the word shared value, I snigger to myself because it's a nice word to say, but if you truly talk about shared value, then all of the money that you make will be shared out between your customers, employees, suppliers, the government, and the communities in which you operate. So don't say it if you don't truly believe it, but it is one of those words that we often talk about and often use. How do they manage stakeholder engagement? They got a stakeholder engagement policy, which is approved by the board. They've got social and ethics committees. They communicate at the AGM through the media. Their focus is on social impact, sustainability, and responsible citizenship. Issues that have identified, prioritized, are tracked for response and escalation. So they've got a very much a open, very transparent, again, because they are a public company. And if they follow the King 16 principle of inclusive stakeholder governance, they are an example of one that at least from what they say, they've got everything in place. They've got all the I's dotted, they've got all the T's crossed. I will include the TFG Integrated Report, which is the March 2025 report, as well as the King 4 alignment, because they've got an actual separate document where they talk about each one of the King 4 principles. Remember, it's a principle of tell us how it is aligned, don't leave out. So they actually have a document where they're aligned to talk through each one of the King 4 principles and how it is aligned and where it can be found in the integrated report. And I will share that as well with you. All right, let me stop there. Are there any questions, Sophie?
I did have one question.
Yes.
Obviously, like the climate's always changing, and like in the world, in the business world, and everything. And like King Code is also it's not just stating what you've taken on as your responsibility, but why and how you are doing it. And I feel like maybe at one point in time you've taken on like a certain responsibility that was appropriate then but isn't now. Do you have to disclose that, and do you have to go into the process of why you are kind of maybe stepping away from that responsibility as a business? Or like, is that, in terms of being transparent, is that required, or do you think you can kind of silently step away from that responsibility?
I think it's if you're living by sort of inclusive stakeholder engagement and transparency, then you need to disclose it. You need to disclose it. Say, for instance, Sasol made a decision maybe to move away from coal mining because it's one of the biggest polluters in the world. And according to the SDG, the development goals, as well as COP30 now that they're busy with in Brazil, as well as King 4 in terms of stakeholder engagement or in terms of environmental policy, they disclosed that maybe 5 years ago, because 5 years ago there was a lot of pressure on companies to distance themselves from coal, especially with the SDG sort of goals, but also, you know, social development, social governance, SG. What's SG? Social something is SEG. Social environmental SEG. So social environmental and governance. There was a lot of pressure because it was very much in vogue. It was very much a theme. European companies and European, and even in South Africa, a lot of investment funds was talking about, oh, we must disinvest and we must take Sasol out of our portfolio because they're a polluter, and there was actual scores. You could see which companies was invested in your portfolio, so that you, as a pensioner that has monies invested in an investment company, can tell them, I don't want you to put my money into tobacco companies, into oil companies, into the Sasol. That was about 10 years ago. The winds have changed a lot. There's a lot more, it's a lot more quieter around sort of, you know, ESG. You know, things are a lot more quieter around impact investing. Impact investing was a big thing about 10 years ago. It's no longer such a big thing. So as an investment company, 10 years ago, you said, we're going to divest from companies like Sasol and all of these companies. Because Sasol is now 40 shares on the JSE, which means every single investment company in South Africa that has investment product is invested in Sasol. You know, and 10 years ago, they said, we're going to divest from blah, 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 and all of this. And quietly, they've just kept things quiet. Impact investing is not such a big thing any longer. Divesting out of Sasol is not a big thing. Nobody talks about it. So you can almost ask yourself, in terms of these sort of investment companies that 10 years ago was so big on impact investing and divesting from polluting and polluting companies, where are they now? And have they truly done that? You know, so that's a good question. You're absolutely right. If you live and die by transparency, then you have to be transparent about it. Does that answer the question?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Alrighty, awesome. Sophie, thank you very much for joining me this evening. I thought it was going to be a short session, as I always say. And once I get going, I get going.